So I recently did a video that I filmed in a hotel room about business travel. Traveling for business is something that I hadn't done for about 5 years, and doing so reminded me of a bunch of best practices that I'd sort of picked up over the years, and I thought, let's call this a travel guide for the reluctant business traveler. A specific one to start out: if you're planning to film a video on the other side of your plane trip in your hotel room, probably travel with a microphone. Otherwise, you're going to be reliant on the microphone in your iPhone, and you're going to pick up a lot of air conditioning sounds. You have a microphone, probably, so bring it with you so that you can use that when you're recording your video. On the broader topic of packing, I tend to overpack, and the amount that I overpack is inversely correlated to the length of my trip. If I'm only going to be there for one day, theoretically you could probably get away without bringing any extra clothes at all. But you are running the risk that you are going to find yourself in need of those extra clothes, and if you don't have them, that's going to be a problem. On the other hand, if you're going to be there for 2 weeks, the redundancy that starts to build up simply by traveling with a rational amount of clothes for 2 weeks means that you don't really need any sort of backup clothes, because you essentially have backup clothes built into your process. One thing I will give you specific advice on that I wish I'd given myself advice on for this last trip, because I'd done it to myself before: if you are traveling with a new pair of shoes that you haven't broken in yet, bring a backup pair of shoes that you can wear when you're traveling, when you're walking around, when you're not in that meeting where those shoes are appropriate. People who wear heels probably already well aware of this advice, but if you don't, if you just bring that one pair of shoes that you're wearing the whole time and they're not broken in, you could find yourself with blisters all over your feet, which I have done now twice on business trips, having not remembered the advice I learned a long time ago to not do that. Once you're packed, one thing that is commonly asked is, should you check a bag? I don't need a lot of extra toiletries, so all of my liquids fit in that little plastic bag that they require you to put everything into. I put that in my laptop bag, which means that it's easily accessible, and even if everything goes pear-shaped, I still have a toothbrush and some toothpaste. Some of you might need more toiletries. You might have requirements that push you beyond what is allowed to be in that little bag. And in that case, you may have no choice but to check a bag. But if you don't find yourself in that group, when should you check a bag? If you're traveling for long enough that you need a larger suitcase, then you don't really have any choice. If you are switching airline alliances and you need to quickly move from one part of an airport to another part of an airport with all of your luggage, and cannot trust that your checked bags are going to make it because you're switching between logistics networks, then you basically can't check a bag. If you are on a direct flight and you really want to get out of the airport as fast as possible, don't check a bag. But if you are going through a bunch of different cities on your way to your final destination, I find that the amount of peace of mind that comes from checking a bag outweighs the inconvenience on the end of your flight of having to wait for the thing to come onto the luggage carousel. I've never had a bag lost. I have had to wait a really long time for it to puke out the other side, but I've never had a bag lost. On the other hand, I have left luggage in random airport restaurants because you're traveling for 12 hours and you're just exhausted and you just forgot you were traveling with a bag, and suddenly it's left there in a restaurant and you forget about it. That's one of the reasons why I keep my toiletries in my laptop bag, because that's the bag that I'm always sure is with me. And then if I decide that I want to check something, I don't have to worry about it. If you're traveling with a roller bag, some planes, it basically isn't going to fit in that overhead compartment, regardless of if it fits into the metal thing or not. In that case, the airline might be looking for people to gate check. I've gate checked. It is kind of, in a lot of ways, the best of both worlds. If you don't need anything out of that roller bag, then you gate check it and it's waiting for you as you get off the plane. You don't have to wait for the carousel. It's waiting for you to get off the plane. For me, I gate check sometimes. I tend to check a bag if there are any layovers in my flight. Otherwise, I typically don't, unless I'm traveling with so much luggage that it's basically required anyway. If you have status with the airline alliance, chances are you're going to get one free checked bag. If not, and you're having to pay for your checked bag, well, hopefully your company is reimbursing that. If they're not, that's a bit of a problem. But then I understand that, yeah, maybe you wouldn't want to check a bag in that case. For seating, I like to sit where I'm able to get off the plane as quickly as possible, which basically means in an aisle as close to the front of the plane as I can. I prefer an aisle. It gives you a little bit of extra leg room. It's not a big deal, but it gives you a little bit of extra ability to move about. But for me, the number one thing is just be at the front of the plane or as close to the front of the plane as you can, because I don't really care how long it takes me to get on a plane, but I definitely care how long it takes me to get off a plane, because by the time we've landed, I'm pretty ready to get out of there. So the closer you are to the front, the faster that's going to go. Unless they unload from the back, which has happened to me exactly one time, but was quite a revelation when it did. Something new I experienced on this most recent trip that I'd never had to deal with before was switching airline alliances mid-trip. So airline alliances, I don't know what the actual term is, but airlines have kind of grouped themselves into a couple of groups where they recognize each other's frequent flyer programs, but also, and much more importantly, they're easily able to check you in for all the flights along your route without a problem. So if you're flying Air Canada and then you're switching to United, you can just check in with Air Canada. They can check you into all the flights along the way, and you have boarding passes for everything. That's not what happened here when I was coming back from San Francisco. I was flying San Francisco to Las Vegas and Las Vegas to Edmonton because it was the only way I could get back after the meeting I had on the same day. Otherwise, I had to wait until the next day to fly back. But because of that, I was switching airline alliances. And what happened, I could not check in online to my flight at all because it just got confused. It just didn't understand what was going on. So I had to go to the airport in San Francisco in order to check in at all. With that airline, they were only able to check me in for the flight from San Francisco to Las Vegas. So I'm landing in Las Vegas with no boarding pass for the flight from Las Vegas to Edmonton, meaning that there's a reasonable chance that I'm going to get stuck in Las Vegas with no ability to get back to Edmonton. Because there are circumstances under which if you don't check into your flight too close to when it's going to take off, they just bump you off that flight. Now, fortunately, that's not what happened here, but it definitely introduced a ton of additional stress into the process that was completely unnecessary. In the year 2024, you would think these computer systems would be able to talk to each other and they would be able to check you in regardless of alliances, but that's not what happened. So my recommendation, brand new one for me, is don't switch airline alliances if you can avoid it, because there's still a lot of lumps in there and it's still not a smooth process. Again, you may have no choice. I had no choice, but there's the advice. If you're traveling a significant distance east or west, then you have to deal with jet lag. My advice for jet lag is a little bit different than what other people might tell you. A lot of people will say that you should try to stay up until the normal time you go to bed in your new location. And that might be good advice if it's very important for you to adjust to the new time zone. But in most cases, if you're traveling for business, you don't really need to actually fully adjust. You just need to be kind of close-ish. So my advice would be stay up until you're within 4 or even 5 hours of when you would normally go to bed. Go to bed. You might end up waking up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, but chances are that's going to be okay. If you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and your first meeting is at 10, then by the time it is 8 o'clock, you're going to be exhausted, but that's probably okay. Your day is probably over, so you can just go back to bed. And you can slowly adjust that over the week you are in your location, or you can just not bother. You can just be out of sync with everyone else. As long as you are awake when the relevant parts of the day are, who cares? It doesn't matter. We're reluctant travelers, remember? We're not going out to experience the nightlife for the most part anyway. Now, if you're traveling somewhere for some sort of team building exercise and there's a lot of nighttime activities, it might be a little bit more problematic. But even then, just turn into a pumpkin and sneak away as soon as you can and just adjust a little bit. Don't worry about getting fully onto local time because you're traveling for business. You're not traveling for pleasure. Some people have a long list of requirements for a hotel in terms of exercise equipment or swimming pools or whatever. My list is pretty short. It's got to be clean and it has to have a restaurant in it. The reason why I think you should have a restaurant in the hotel is You're traveling for business. You're going to be in this new city. You're not really looking to experience the local culture because you're, again, a reluctant traveler. So you want some place that you know you can eat relatively easily, that the quality is going to be fine, and you're not paying your way anyway, so it doesn't really matter that it's super expensive like most hotel food. I have stayed in hotels that didn't have a restaurant, and what ends up happening is you end up wandering around the hotel area looking for a restaurant, and there's a reasonable chance you're going to end up in a fast food restaurant because you don't really know what is a good restaurant, what is a bad restaurant, and you're not willing to take that chance. So just find a hotel with a restaurant, and it's going to save yourself an extra bit of stress. When you're traveling for business, for me, that's a lot about what this is. It's about removing as much stress from the process as possible. As for the location of the hotel, get it as close to where you need to be as you can. If it's walking distance, great. If you're going to be there a long time, I think there is an argument to be made to having a little bit more distance. If you're half a block away from the office and you're there for a couple of weeks, the lack of division between work and not work might be so fuzzy that you might find yourself massively overworking. But for anything shorter than that, it's just easier. You don't have to deal with Ubers or taxis or renting a car. You're just walking in and out of the office. And again, since we're reluctant travelers, we're not experiencing the nightlife anyway. We just want to go to bed. So we don't need to be downtown where all the cool stuff is. We can be in a hotel in a random business park at the edge of town. And finally, expenses. If you are lucky, you have an executive assistant and they are going to do your expenses for you. But if not, then you are going to have to keep track of all of your expenses. Hopefully you have a corporate credit card at least, but either way, you're going to have to keep receipts and submit them afterwards. My advice is when you get to the hotel that you're checking into, ask them for an envelope. They will give you an envelope. Keep all of your receipts in that one envelope so they don't get lost, and organize them as soon as you get back. Otherwise, there's a reasonable chance you're going to lose something, and then you're going to end up footing the bill for something that the company should have paid for. My general rule is as soon as I start traveling, it's all expensed, and it doesn't stop until I'm back in my house, because that's what business travel is. You're traveling for the business, so you're kind of on the clock the entire time. Your mileage may vary with a lot of this. It's not applicable to everyone. These are my experiences in traveling. As I said, business travel, not my favorite thing. I'm not looking to immerse myself in another culture. I'm looking to go in, have the meetings I'm there to do, and get out. Chances are, if you are someone who is excited about business travel, you don't need any of this advice, because even if you're not a very experienced traveler, you're at least an enthusiastic one, and chances are you can get away with staying in a hotel on the other side of town in the arts district and trying a bunch of random restaurants and changing airlines 17 times, because it's an exciting adventure. It's not an exciting adventure for me. It's not an exciting adventure for a bunch of people. Just remove as many variables as possible if you can. A special thanks to my members. They provide the resources this channel needs to keep running. If you're interested in becoming a member, there's a link to that down in the description. As well, we also have a Patreon now if you're more comfortable supporting the channel in that way. We have merch now. This is File It All and Let Triage Sort It Out. If you're interested in picking up some merch, that also helps the channel out. There'll be a tag in this video for that as well. What are some of your pieces of advice for business travel or travel in general? Put that into the comments so people can pick up from your great travel wisdom. I will see you again soon. Thank you.